Thanks for staying with us. So our focus today is to discuss some of the enormous pressures to have children here in Nigeria, even with the highest fertility rate in the world, is alarming. Many couples still struggle to conceive, and when that happens, the woman takes the brunt of the blame for not conceiving. Now, there's something called cryptic pregnancy. It's a recognized medical phenomenon in which a woman is unaware of her pregnancy until late stages. This term, as we have come to find out, has been hijacked by quite a bit of scammers, making ignorant women actually believe they are pregnant. So the BBC recently launched a documentary on cryptic pregnancy scam targeting women in Nigeria. Joining us to speak on the findings in the documentary via Zoom is Yemisi Adegoke, senior reporter, BBC News. Welcome to the show, Yemisi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Good to have you on the show. So tell us a bit about this phenomenon, cryptic pregnancy, especially the scammers here in Nigeria. What is it about? What did you find?
So as you said, the term cryptic pregnancy is a recognized medical term which refers to women who are pregnant and go throughout the pregnancy without knowing that they're pregnant. But this is something that has been hijacked in Nigeria by scammers who essentially trick women into believing that they're pregnant when they aren't. They give them various types of medication, which sometimes makes their body swell, and they believe that they are carrying children. These scammers will tell these women not to go to traditional doctors. They'll tell them not to get any tests, so no ultrasounds, no blood tests. They're told that if they take these tests and they come back negative, that's normal. They're told that they're not carrying their babies in their womb, they're carrying their babies in their back, in their waist. Sometimes these pregnancies last for up to 2 years, and when the time comes for delivery, they are told that the pregnancy can only be induced, or labor can only be induced, rather, by these doctors themselves. So it's a really complicated scam that preys on women that are desperate to have children.
Yeah, so I watched the documentary, and it was shocking to see that even educated women fell for this. And in your opinion, what do you think is responsible for people who are supposed to know better to fall for such a scam, especially when you're hearing something that, like, you're going to be carrying the baby at your back or at your waist, and then you see people who are falling for this and spending a huge amount of money to get this fake pregnancy?
Well, I think that's the thing about this scam. It's usually the victims that fall for this are typically educated. They are people that are wealthy. This is not a cheap scam. This costs millions and millions of naira, this so-called treatment. I think the reasons people fall for it are a mix of things. There is the desperation to have a child. Many of these couples have been trying to conceive for many, many years without success. They're introduced to this scam by people that have been through it and have come out the other end with a child. So they're convinced that it works. There's also the scammers. They're very sophisticated. You know, there's a reason they're telling them not to go to hospitals, not to get medical tests, to trust them and nobody else. And then there's also the religious element, which I don't think you can separate from this. You know, the type of Christianity that's practiced in Nigeria is heavily focused on the idea of the miraculous, that miracles are possible. That's why, you know, these babies are referred to as miracle babies. And if you are of the belief that, you know, miracles are possible, then some people will ask, well, why isn't this possible? Why can't there be a pregnancy that lasts for 13, 14, 15 months? And ultimately, because with this scam, these women do end up with children, to them it's something that works. So all these sort of factors feed into why people are falling for this.
Yemisi, you know, I'm curious, why did you decide to investigate this story? Was it someone you had come in contact with? Or was there just, you know, something you had seen, data you had seen that prompted you to investigate this story?
So this was a huge team effort, and all of us had heard about this story. I mean, I first heard about this story on social media. There was a doctor tweeting about an experience he had with a patient who said that she had had this miraculous pregnancy treatment. And to me, it sounded completely outlandish. I couldn't believe it. My colleagues, Chiagozie and Bere, who you see in the film as the undercover reporters, had also been doing their own research, and our producer in London. So all of us kind of came together on this. But we were surprised to kind of see the scale. It's difficult to put a concrete number because it is so secretive. The nature of the scam means that people don't want this information out there. But, as you see in the film, in the clinic, there are dozens and dozens of women waiting for this treatment. And that's just one clinic on one Saturday morning. Exactly. So you can imagine how many of these clinics exist across the country and how many potentially dozens and dozens of women are being duped by this.
Okay, so did you find this linked to some form of baby factories in any of during this investigation?
Yes, so one of the big questions that we sought to answer throughout this was, where are the babies coming from? Because we know that these children are not biologically related to these cryptic mothers, so the babies are coming from somewhere. And it was the Commissioner for Women's Affairs in Anambra State who made that tie for us that, she said quite definitively that there is no cryptic pregnancy without baby trafficking. And anyone who's gone through this process, the children that they have are children that are trafficked. And that either means that they're coming from baby factories, as you mentioned, the facility in the film that, you can see the young girls that were being basically held captive there. Right. And sometimes brothels too. If young sex workers, if they get pregnant, their babies are often taken and sold. So right. there is a link to trafficking there.
Yeah, see, that's one of the problems I'm having with this entire episode, because I can't seem to wrap my head around calling these women victims, because for me, they seem to be complicit. First of all, you're told you're pregnant and there's no visible pregnancy. And then 9 months after or 2 years after, when you accept a baby, shouldn't they also be arrested or somehow complicit in this entire scam?
I mean, I think that's part of the sort of difficulty, I think, with this story. I think these women are in very vulnerable states a lot of the time. There are, as we all know, massive challenges and stigma attached to infertility, particularly women. We spoke to women that have been abused, ostracized by their families, have faced all kinds of, derogatory and demeaning treatment because they've been unable to conceive. And that pushes some people to extremes. I think there are some women who genuinely believe that these are their children. Others maybe are a little bit more, aware that there's something dodgy going on. But I think that, it's difficult to fully kind of villainize these people when you kind of hear how vulnerable they are. And that's not to excuse, what they're doing. But I think once you kind of hear these stories and know how difficult life is for some of these women, and that desperation pushes people to do all kinds of things. And that's not to excuse it. I just think it's a little bit messy.
Okay.
Just to understand a bit, because, in the introduction, we're told that they would give these women some injections and some treatments. So I'm curious, were you able to find out what injections and medicines that they gave them, and how did they affect their health, or if it was just some placebo, and then when they get the children, do they take them for hospital visits? Is there any point in time, do you have any point in time to show that maybe they check the DNA and realize that they were not their biological children? How does it eventually end up for these mothers and children?
So the medication question, that's a very good question. We actually did try to get the medication tested. Our undercover reporter she went to the clinic twice and was given medication on 2 occasions. So we did try to take it to the lab to get it tested. The problem is that you need a very large sample in order to test, and we simply didn't have enough medication for them to categorically determine what the medication is, which was very unfortunate. So I don't want to speculate on what it could potentially be. What we do know is that it does cause swelling. That a lot of the women that we spoke to that have been through the process reported that, their stomach starts swelling. There was a lady who said that, after she'd taken the medication, she felt like she couldn't breathe. So there are potential health implications. We just can't really say what, unfortunately. And as for the children, in the film, you do see a woman with a baby that she had through this cryptic pregnancy process. She did actually take the child for a DNA test because her husband's family did not believe that this child was biologically theirs. The DNA test did come back negative. Her and her husband said that their cryptic doctor told them that the DNA would change within a year.
Yeah.
So they believe
I don't even know to laugh
they
or cry.
believe that the DNA will change within a year. And I mean, if you watch the film, you'll kind of see the reaction of the commissioner and sort of everybody in the room. But they are adamant that the DNA will change within a year to reflect their DNA and that he is the young boy is their biological child.
Okay.
This is a very sad one for me.
Yeah.
Because I can relate. I've seen women in this category a lot. My fear is, in order to give them their babies, they have to go through childbirth, labor, or cesarean sessions. Have you seen women who went the entire haul? Did you see them during this recording? And there's possibility of harvesting an organ if you're, allowing doctors to do invasive procedure on you. Did you see any damaging result as a result of this in any of the women?
So what we have been told in terms of labor is that sometimes these women are given an injection and they fall asleep and they wake up with a cesarean-like incision on their stomachs. Other times they say that they have been told to push, to sort of lie back and push. And ultimately they're given a child at the end. We haven't heard of any sort of complications around that yet, but those are the stories that we have heard, that it's either they're given medication, they go to sleep, and they wake up with cuts on their stomachs, or they're given something and told to push.
So the particular doctor that was investigated, I would like to know what is happening to her at the moment. What evidence were you able to get to probably prosecute her in line with the government? And how do you think, because I strongly believe that if we still continue the narrative in Nigeria where if you do not have a husband, you are not able to have a child, you're less than a woman, we're definitely going to have people put in this desperate mode. And this people will always keep, scamming them of their money to give them what they want, right? So how do you also think that we can begin to, change the mentality of Nigerians, the society at large, and how we treat women who have infertility issues?
So with Dr. Ruth, as you saw with the conclusion of the film, she told our undercover reporter that she was pregnant. We did a pregnancy test on our undercover reporter. She wasn't pregnant. What happens to her now is down to the authorities. We are reporters, we are journalists. Our job is to expose wrongdoing. We do not have the power to prosecute. That is down to
The government.
To take that on. It's not our job. Our remit doesn't stretch that far. But we are waiting to see what will happen to her, if anything.
Right.
With regard to the stigma, I think that's a really important point, and I think the authorities can do a lot in terms of prosecuting people that they find are responsible for these kinds of scams. But if the attitudes don't change towards women and fertility, stigma around adoption, and other paths to parenthood, we're going to continue to see scams like this. This is why these types of scams thrive, because there is that abuse and ostracization leveled at women who, for whatever reason, are unable to have children.
Yemisi, so the reason why I was struggling is because I've actually experienced this in my own life. So let me show you with you my own story. My brother was supposed to get married to a woman. They were supposed to be dating. Now, for whatever reason, she said she got pregnant. And because she got pregnant, my family started planning a wedding. So immediately, she was telling us she was about 4 months pregnant, and her tummy was actually visibly inflated. So the entire family put together an introduction. In fact, it was almost an engagement. It wasn't an engagement, it was an introduction. Her house was in Lekki. We went there with family to meet the family. My brother came with her. She's the husband's wife, or husband's family. Anyways, we did the introduction. After that, about a month after, my brother tried to follow her for antenatal, but she keeps saying, don't bother, you don't have to follow me for antenatal. At some point, when she was supposed to be maybe 6 months in, he then found out that there was nothing in her tummy. She was never pregnant. but she had an inflated because she was actually taking some of these hormones. So that's why I keep saying that it's good to see some women are victims. But in some cases, some women use it to scam others because he had to just call off everything. In fact, he went as bad into depression because he was expecting twins. He painted the children's room, boy, girl. He bought cribs.
She told him.
I mean, we all were expecting babies. The whole family, he was really excited, painted the room, bought clothes.
She did the scam.
She scammed him. It was a family thing.
Okay,
so
that might be
so in that
deliberate.
situation, so it's
Yes.
deliberate. So there are some people who know they can take hormones to
So what I would
scam
like
somebody
Yemisi
into
to
get married.
advise is the stigma. So I had a close friend who had what is called false pregnancy. She had gone in 2 months because she didn't see her period, which had happened to me. I had gone 56 days without my period, and it was a scan that showed I was pregnant. So hormonally, things can happen. She had gone in 2 months and found out a pregnancy test that was positive, came back home excited. We had all celebrated. 4 months into her pregnancy, she's, of course, growing. Her body parts are growing. And then we said, let's do a scan. And a scan showed that there was no pregnancy. And so she got into a desperate search for validation in one hospital to the next, because the in-laws, you know the pressure on women. How will she tell them? And she visibly looks it. So how does she... And we had to hold her hand, assure her that we would love her through whether or not she has a baby. Till date, she's
different angles.
She's not had a baby. How do you advise, people, society to treat some cases that are innocent, especially so that the women don't get desperate and find a hospital like this and just buy a baby?
I know, and it's not really a question to you, Yemisi. It's just a conversation.
Well, yes,
I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
But let me see if she wants to say something. Yemisi, you want to say something to this?
Either.
No, I mean, I think, it's complicated. I think what we've seen women who definitely do believe this, and whether that's them sort of suspending the rational part of their brain because they're just so desperate to believe this. Like I said, I think desperation really drives people to do crazy things they wouldn't normally do. And I think if you're being pushed to the point where you're sort of taking any kind of medication that you don't know what it is, that you're willing to risk your health, you're willing to put yourself through all sorts, taking on a trafficked child. I mean, I think you have to ask what would drive someone to do that. That's what does that say about society? That we're in a country, or we have a culture that would push women, that the stigma is so bad that they feel that they cannot live without doing this, that they have to do, this is a path that they would choose, rather than just saying, maybe we should adopt, or maybe we should look for another path to become parents, or maybe it's just not in the cards for us to become parents. Why is it that women are being driven to do this? I think is sort of the bigger question.
So this isn't a question too particularly, but it's about, where I hope this investigation would lead. That definitely that doctor must have some association with like a kidnap ring or something like that. Yes, baby trafficking. There's a phenomenon, of course, here in Nigeria where we have baby factories. And usually the story we have is young teenage girls, taken to a special place, and then, they give birth to their babies that they hand over, sometimes for free, sometimes for some amount of money. And I hope that your investigation would lead to a serious investigation into that and see how we can stop that from continuing in our country. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Yemisi. We have to let you go at this point, but we're wishing you all the best with this investigation and hope that, indeed, as Mariam said, that something does come out of it. Any final words on your end before we let you go?
No, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everybody that has watched the film. It's still available on the BBC Africa YouTube channel. The name is Nigeria's Miracle Baby Scammers.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Let's go on a short break now. When we come back, we continue with this conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.